Welcome to The Essential Element, the Elements of Education podcast. My name is Christian Page. Grateful that you all are here. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be here with us. And today, Zach and I have a really special episode for you. There is one thing to have a theory about something. There's another to see grounded theory happen in real time. We're talking not only about students, but about what students go on to do. And a lot of students in this particular frame that we're going to be talking about have gone on to become teachers because of the impact that's happened here at SAMI, SOTA, and IDEA. So special episode, Zach.
Special episode. Excited to share stories of some incredible young humans that have turned into young adults that are now young mentors and becoming some of them seasoned veteran mentors in our system. Our system being like our three schools. But it's so exciting. A lot of these people I knew as students when I was a teacher, and to now have them as colleagues to work alongside me and see how they've grown in our system and really embodied our four pillars. And then they come back and want to dedicate their lives to continuing that mission is one of the more inspiring things of being an educator, when you see that compounding and effect of mentorship being this thing that you give, take, and then give back. It becomes this like really beautiful cyclical process.
What does it feel like to just put your hands up and say, it worked? Right?
Exactly. It is exciting. And I think each one of these individuals, so we're going to hear from Max King today, who graduated from SOTA and now is a teacher at SAMI in her second year. We're going to hear from Zach Martin, who was one of my mentees. He was in my mentor group when I was at SOTA. Now he's teaching at IDEA. We're going to hear from Alasia, who graduated from SOTA and is now working as an adjunct with our programs. We're going to hear from Jesse, who I also had in class when I was a teacher back at SOTA, is now special ed teacher at SOTA. So and these are just a few. There's dozens of students that have, some of which have come back to teach at our schools, some of which, continue on and teaching in other institutions or become leaders. I think at this point we have 3 graduates that are on city council from our programs. We've had just incredible success seeing individuals really see these 4 pillars and this idea of education being about relationships and mentorship, take that belief system out into the world to become mentors and leaders on their own, which is what you want, right? Like you want to create lifelong humans that have dedicated their lives to making the world a better place. I think that education, often we think about it happening within the context of 4 walls, 4 years, this like square box that we place it in. Education is a lifelong universal experience. You continue to learn throughout your life. You continue to teach throughout space and time. It's not just the 4 years while you're in high school. So the fact that you can see students take those pillars and those belief systems and then take them out into the world, it just expands our mission. It's not just about what happens inside these walls. It's about what happens throughout the rest of their lives. What do they go on and do? What do those humans believe in? And how are they going to change the world to make it a better place for everyone? I mean, that's why we do school, right?
Absolutely. And I love that you touch on the thing that they believe in. I think the thing that has impacted me most in listening to the stories or even having conversations with a lot of the individuals that we get the opportunity to see is this idea of their aha moment or their comeback moment or the decision where you're like, you know what, I think I want to try this. I think the instruction was important.
Yeah.
I think that like being fully prepared is important, but all of the pivoting moments centered around a relationship and almost can be pinpointed back to one human being.
Well,
right?
and that's the story of every teacher, right? Like you ask any teacher I know, what made you decide to become a teacher? And there's a memory that they have that shifted their thinking. And those are the key moments in a person's life when they decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to go make a bunch of money, work in finance? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's an important role in some people's lives. But for someone to say like, hey, I actually want to dedicate my life to making, providing a better opportunity for young people. There's kind of a theory I have with education. And I think one of the hardest things we face as educators, our mission is to change public education, is to evolve it so that it more serves the needs of the diverse populations that we serve. And quite honestly, education has not changed a whole lot in the last 100, 150 years. And I think the reason it's so hard to change is the people that get involved in education are the people whom the system served and it worked for them, which is maybe 20% of the population. If I'm a kid that did well by sitting in rows and listening to lectures and taking notes and then regurgitating that back, of course I'm going to want to come back and say, yeah, that system worked great. Why would I want to change it? It worked for me. And for 20% of the population, I'm just making that number up. But for that group of people, sure, that worked.
Yeah.
But everyone else is like, no, this doesn't work for me. And this isn't how I learn. And it did not serve me well. And I can't wait to get out. None of those people want to come back and work in public education because they're like, it didn't work. It didn't serve me. I did what I had to do. I graduated. And once I was gone, I was never turning back.
Yeah.
So to really change how public education operates, you have to invest in people that see it differently, that show up every day because it didn't work for them, because they want to make it work. And so to have now 20 years under our belt, we have a new generation of teachers that have gone through our system and see that it doesn't have to look the same. It can be different. It can be centered around authentic experiences that do change people's lives. Max King talked about what was the moment that she realized this is different. It's the conversation she had in an internship with a doctor that said, this is how you approach this. It's not a lecture she read in class.
Yeah.
That didn't change her life. It was that relationship with someone who was actually doing the work. Or Jessie talking about the mentorship relation she had with her dance teacher, Robin, and how they both shared the same experience of their parent passing away from the same type of cancer. And how do you get through difficult things in life? That was the changing moment in her life, not the test she took on a certain day. And I'm not here to like rail against tests. I'm just saying like those experiences will change people's lives. And now they want to create those experiences for the next generation of students.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be an either or. There's both and in the conversation. But I do think that there's a different level of empathy, a different level of community that is built when people hold the core values that are held at SAMI, SOTA, and IDEA.
Absolutely.
Man, we're almost playing spoiler alert to the stories, right? Don't want to lead too much. But I just want to emphasize the point, right? That like when you get to see something come full circle, that the proof is in the pudding, that the evidence of like the idea coming full circle, I think is really special.
Yeah.
And then to be able to hear from these folks, and a lot of them that I know personally, like this feels really cool. Like, I don't know if you have enough excitement on your face for me about how awesome it is. Right?
It is very cool. I get very excited. Yeah. These are just 4 stories that we're going to hear, but there are so many more of graduates that come back and tell us how that moment changed their life. I know for me personally, and I'd love to hear your story too. Yeah. I had a 5th grade teacher that changed the way that I thought about education. And I could go into all the stories he had, but so many experiences from 5th grade because of how he approached education from a totally different lens. We would do, orienteering, and we'd go off into the woods with a compass and learn how to read a map as 5th graders and learn how to do geocaching back in the 90s before that was even a thing, before GPS. We spent time learning how to like speed read, and he would like walk us through this imaginary world where we'd see the words like flying off the page. I still remember these conversations. I don't remember anything from 3rd grade or 4th grade or 6th grade, but I remember so much from 5th grade because that teacher changed my life. And that's what motivated me to say, I loved going to school in 5th grade. I couldn't get enough of it. Why can't that be every year? Why doesn't school always exist like that?
Absolutely.
Do you have a moment of
same boat
teacher that you remember everything from that person? Or?
Yeah. 9th grade, honors English, Ronnie Gordon.
Oh yeah.
And still, one of my friends and to this day, but introduced me to writers. Now I'm like Tacoma's poet laureate. I had no interest in writing at all, right? Wow. Like it wasn't my thing. But he introduced me to like writers that I don't think would have been shown in any of the other standardized curriculum, right? Yeah. So like, you have Harlem Renaissance poets, you have writers who are revolutionaries, you have, right? Like you can go back to like some civilizations that are not the United States, right? Where the artist or the storyteller was the most important person around, right? Because oral tradition is how they held the stories together. And so Ronnie showed me a lot of that. And another teacher down the road was an individual, last name was Rogers. And I remember us doing a project and I just approached her. I said, look, we had to do summer reading and then we had to do like a capstone report. This is an AP class. And I had been turned off because my sophomore year, I walked into the advanced writing class. And like Ronnie prepared me really well. Went to a sophomore space and I switched schools a lot. And the teacher asked me, she was like, yo, are you sure you're supposed to be here? And I'm like, all right. And then junior year, I run into Rogers. We have the AP conversation. I'm like, yo, these folks don't reflect me. I really don't care anything. Like, I love the Crucible. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Right.
Is there any way that I could do my project on a canon or, for lack of a better term, a discography on somebody who I care about?
Yeah.
She's like, absolutely, your choice.
Yeah.
And I think folks would later on come to describe this as something like culturally responsive teaching.
Right.
She was like, yo, if you find the person, I'll approve said person. And it does not have to be on the list of things that was provided by, like, you know, I'll go to bat for you if anybody has anything to say about it.
Yeah.
And I think both of them together, right, between Ronnie and Rogers, are the reason why I still write today.
That's awesome.
And writing's my thing, right? It pays the bills at my house. And so I think both of them I'm really grateful for.
That's awesome. Well, without further ado.
Enough about us, huh?
Enough about us. These are the stories of 4 students from the School of the Arts that went on to become teachers. Enjoy.
Awesome.
We're excited to talk to you today about all the things that you've learned at SOTA and how that has translated to becoming a teacher. Tell us first, if you remember back from being a student at SOTA, we talk a lot about the 4 pillars of empathy, community, balance, and thinking. How did those 4 pillars, how did they shape the way that you saw the world when you left high school?
I mean, first and foremost, I came to SOTA for the community of, I think, like-minded, creative people. It was something I wasn't really finding as a student. I was at a 2,000 person high school, public high school down in Olympia at the time, and I made the decision to commute up to Tacoma because I had met a few students that were going to SOTA, and I was just really thrilled to be working and collaborating with other people in the context of design. For me specifically, that was something I knew I was already interested in. So the community there, of not just students, but the teachers and instructors that I met at some of the first looks was really inspiring. And I think the scale of it as well, being kind of a smaller school, felt more personal, felt like I was going to get that face time with peers and teachers that can be hard to get at, I think, a traditional school. So that community immediately welcomed me and was really, really special. In terms of some of the other pillars, I think some of the other experiences that have really stood out to me are my work with the Bridge program, working with younger students, mentoring students, creating that empathy for all the, not just peers, but some of the students that we got to tutor and work with in class was really special. So that experience of like helping other people, especially in something that you have passion and expertise in, was really, really, I think, foundational. Like, looking back, I didn't stop tutoring all throughout college after starting at SOTA, and I think that kind of inadvertently led me back to teaching, which was really special. So some of those are memories that stand out to me. Mentor group, of course, too. Just making time to like connect with people every week, and listen to their experiences, and share my own experiences. Like, creating space to both share and listen was totally novel to me, and was something I remember fondly, and am trying to cultivate with my own mentor group now. And it's fun explaining to, or it's fun to see, the freshmen that come in, kind of maybe questioning why we spend a good portion of our day like listening to each other's experiences, whether they're about school or not, but quickly seeing them like take advantage of that, and then even look forward to those opportunities to share within that community have been, it's been special to see.
I think going to SOTA, you experience such a diversity of people, all the way from like what their artistic background is to like maybe what part of the city they're from. Some people are coming in from outside cities. And there are a lot of times, especially like in mentor group, where you have to really listen and actively listen to other people's experiences and realize like, wow, like my initial thought or the way I perceive something isn't the way that somebody else perceives it. And it's not better or worse, it's just different.
Yeah. What were there specific skills that you feel like you developed at SOTA to learn how to see the world from another student's lens or somebody else that might have a different perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, we started doing circles back when I went to SOTA. And so that was a time to develop active listening and really get to know the people around you. Also, a lot of the project-based learning that we did was centered around empathy. I remember we had kind of like an empathy lens for one of my history assignments where we had just read Things We Carried by Tim O'Brien. And we were supposed to use our art form to communicate something like symbolic that related on a deep emotional level to what the soldiers had gone through.
Yeah.
And because it's project-based learning to this day, like I remember the things I drew, why I drew them, and what they represented to like tell this story that has probably been studied in like countless schools, but like, is it just something on paper? Are you just writing an essay? Or it's like I made a piece of art and had this opportunity to connect with that story on such a deep level.
That's awesome.
I would say to not think of things in a box. I think I've always been a person where I would plan everything in my life, where like, I was like, I want to be a singer, this, that. That's boom, that's it. Hit that goal, nothing else. But I think being here and being challenged to try other things instead of just singing, I think, because I mean, I took photography with Ike. I did theater and learned the basics of lighting design. I ended up learning more about jazz and been, booked for jazz shows and stuff like that. Like that very much expanded my take on what art is, and it made me prioritize and care more about collaborating with other artists, which now, I have my arts collective, but that is very much what molded me to be more, caring more about just working with other people outside of myself. I would say with the mentoring, we do have our one more assigned mentor, which mine was Cornelius. Although I will say I had more than one. I would say like it was Derek, it was Kareem, which was an adjunct artist. It was Bliss, Emily Wickman, like all these people that showed care in like my dreams and what I wanted to do. And I had that support system. And it helped me carry me through, even through those moments when I didn't think I was gonna make it through, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I guess it's just like I never really had a big family experience because like I don't have a lot of family up here. So having this as a home, I never really would have thought school would be a home for me. And there's some days before I started coming back and teaching here, I kind of miss sleeping in the studio room with Derek. I kind of miss sleeping in the couch, in the studio room in Derek's room. Because honestly, I would, be tired or something. But those are moments that I also miss, maybe made it feel homely.
I think you've mentioned to me before that you had some health issues in high school that kind of made it tough. How did your mentorship, not necessarily your mentor, but the people, how did they help you get through that?
So I would say it started flaring up in my sophomore year. I ended up having a really bad blood disorder. And so it's with like oxygen in your blood cells, it's not sickle cell. And it just caused me to bleed very easily, and my body could not ingest iron very well. So it started just trickling down after sophomore year. I had to start missing school a lot. When I would be in classes and things, I would just fall asleep. A lot of times teachers thought I was disrespectful at times until I had to like break it down to them. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. And when I say I had so much support, like then, they would bring me snacks to make sure I ate in the day. But yeah, and a lot of people didn't know about it at first because I kind of wanted to keep it a secret until I passed out twice and the ambulance had to come and get me multiple times from school. But through that, I was out for 3 months and I was in and out the hospital and I was getting, I think, my third transfusion. And during there, I was in for about a little bit over 2 weeks and I was by myself. Well, besides my mother, but I was pretty much by myself because she had to go to work as well. But through that, during the daytime, they would call my mom and ask her I was in there, and they would just come and pull up and entertain me. Like, I never forget Steve, he came and he rapped for me for the first time. Didn't even know he rapped until that day. Kareem, he would bring me food and he would just sit there and just like kind of take it off my mind, like not me, thinking that I'm not just not thinking I'm a sickly person, like not looking at me as if I'm sick, and that was kind of the the hardest part was like coming back to school and everyone trying to take care of you and coddle you. But honestly, now as I'm looking outside of it, that was what I needed, I think, was just that care and that support system. But yeah, I would say that connection there is what, honestly, like I still call them up anytime I need anything now. So
when I was in high school, like I said, my dad was terminally ill with cancer, and I was like skipping a ton, and I was like saying I was going up to the hospital to spend time with my family, but I wasn't. I was just like out hanging out with my friends. And I remember Robin pulling me aside, who was like, I think I spent the most time in her class. I don't really remember if she was ever my mentor because I got moved around a lot, but I remember her telling me like, you know, your dad isn't gonna like, he's not gonna outlive this thing. This is like, this thing is gonna happen to you, and you have to decide who you're gonna be at the end of it. And it turned out that, you know, her dad had passed away from the same type of cancer. And that conversation has stayed with me in my entire life. And like, it's the reason I graduated. It's the reason why I continued to dance after high school. And like that vulnerable conversation, like really kicked me into gear where I was like, this isn't happening to me. Like, I am not a victim here. I'm responding to like this hard thing that I'm going through. And I still have the ability to like create who I'm going to be on the outside of it. And I think that like that, without having that conversation and that connection and that like vulnerability between the two of us, I don't think that like I would have made it to graduation at all.
Can you think, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you think of a story, you mentioned being a bridge, teaching empathy.
Yeah.
Can you think of a memory from high school of being a bridge, something that really stood out as an impactful experience where you learned how to use empathy as a skill in the bridge program?
Yeah. I remember working really closely with Wes, a student named Wes. And I believe I was a junior and he was a sophomore at the time. And this is my first time really doing any kind of like tutoring or kind of one-on-one work. And I went into it not really knowing what to expect. But I was helping him out in bio class. And at the time, I think he was really struggling with reading and writing. Mm-hmm. I think he was kind of at like maybe like a middle school reading level. And so we were working together to just kind of digest material. We would kind of sit in the back and have our own little council. Yeah. And Abby Brown was teaching bio at the time. And it was just a super rewarding experience because we had a great time, first of all. And he was just a super, super creative guy, and really inspired me in the sense that he would just approach some of the problems in bio. It was a class I'd already taken, and I thought like I knew. I thought I kind of had it figured out. And he would just ask like such insightful questions, and was just a joy to work with him and get kind of a new perspective on a topic I had kind of already taken. So it was a really, really refreshing, wonderful experience. And it made me realize that I just really enjoyed working with other people. And so there's that kind of that thinking piece, that the inquiry process there with another individual, and just getting to help them kind of with their challenges, but also benefiting from that experience of really seeing a topic or a subject through a totally different lens was special for me. So I remember working with Wes and grateful for that experience. And I hope he's doing well. But we had a good time in the back of Abby Brown's bio class.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you jump into, so after high school you go to Western. Mm-hmm. What prompted you to study industrial design? Like, what was your interest in pursuing that as a field?
Yeah, it really stemmed from my internship junior year. That was really, really cool. I interned just down the street at Madera Woodworking. I knew I was into design, graphic design, but I also really liked kind of working with my hands and fabricating stuff. And so furniture design out of the options kind of stood out. I didn't know what industrial design was as a field, but I found Madera's Wood Studio. Had a phenomenal time there. They taught me everything, really, all the foundational skills, from from 3D modeling and CAD to sketching out plans and using a shop. And it was through them that I met an industrial designer. I'm forgetting his name, but he was really, really foundational in introducing me to industrial design. And he had recently quit his job, which is really interesting time to meet him. He had quit his job and started his own firm, really with the goal to create sustainable products. He had been in, creating products for years and years and years, and he had this kind of dream to create sustainably produced products, and that really, really stood out to me. And I basically set out to kind of follow in those footsteps, and I found Western's industrial design program. They accept 12 people every year, small cohort. Wow. So that really stood out to me. Small, tight-knit group of people, kind of solving big problems. It was, to me, it was like the natural continuation of what we were doing at SOTA. And so, it was a product of that internship experience that connected me to the craft, the skills, and also the people that inspired me to follow that path.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So then keep walking through this timeline. So
Yeah.
You graduate Western, you've this degree in industrial engineering. Can you talk me through like what prompted you to be interested in teaching?
Yeah, so like I said, throughout school, throughout studying industrial design, I was part of the tutoring program. Started through the program there, through Western's program, and then kind of ventured out into like independent clients. And I found that I really enjoyed working with like that high school age, like pre-college. Just a lot of excitement with students, teaching everything or tutoring everything from math to art. And when I graduated, I graduated into the pandemic basically, and it was like full remote. I was working at a medical company based in Canada for a while, doing product design for a medical sensor and an ultrasound suite that they were kind of developing. And then I moved into working at Amazon and Blue Origin, doing graphic design, and it was a gratifying experience. But I missed a lot of the face-to-face human interaction. And that kind of the spirit of growth that comes with teaching and tutoring and kind of striving for that common goal. And it was totally out of the blue, August 2020, that Melissa Moffett reached out. At the time I was freelancing for Blue Origin, completely remote, and it was a text. She said, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" Called me and was like, "Yeah, we have an adjunct position, part-time, teaching design. What do you think?" And I was super hesitant at first. I was living in Seattle at the time, so it was quite a commute. But I decided to give it a shot. Teaching, really just 2 sections of a human-centered design class, which was cool. So it's project-based design curriculum, really just modeled after the classes I had taken at Western. So kind of bringing that level and bringing some of that curriculum to IDEA, and absolutely loved it. Despite all the challenges, despite the commute, despite coming out of COVID, again, engaging with kids and helping them kind of fulfill the vision with those project-based assignments was awesome. It just brought me back to all the positive things that I experienced here as a bridge, experienced as a tutor at Western, and kind of immediately reconnected with that. It made me realize I had been missing that in my work as a freelancer. So it kind of like filled that gap, and I found myself kind of just like almost distracted by like my real job. It felt like my real job was the side gig, and then my my part-time class that just kind of dominated my that's what I was thinking about on my days off, and took on 2 more classes in the spring, and then transitioned to full-time. The opportunity came at the end of my first year as an adjunct to step in full-time, and again, not really knowing how it would go, kind of just jumped into that and haven't looked back since. It's been really awesome. It's an honor to be a part of the program and to be contributing to the design curriculum. And a lot of it's just like, hey, what would I have been stoked about as a student here at SOTA? What are some of the things I would love to see? So it's fulfilling some of those like early inspirations and aspirations I had as a SOTA student, which is fun.
Yeah. So I was interested in becoming a teacher. Oh my gosh, from such a young age. Like, I think like kindergarten, I had this part of me that always knew I wanted to go into teaching, but it didn't seem kind of like an option necessarily. I was like kind of pushed to go to like work in a lab or to go to medical school. But all of the things that we did at SOTA that kind of prepared me for a teaching career just like felt right. So I felt like, there was a time where we had these like pull-outs where you were like a junior and then you would work with a group of freshmen and a community member to do different projects. And for mine, I was doing kind of like a health-themed one because I wanted to go to medical school. And we got to work with a doctor and learn about like processed sugar and sugar intake and like teach the freshmen. And then we'd go to elementary schools and teach them about what we had learned. And that was like such a significant experience for me because I felt like I was like so impacted by what the doctor had to share with me, but also the opportunity to kind of like organize these lesson plans and to work hands-on with students. And so after that, when I was in college, I decided to be a peer mentor. I decided to be a tutor. And I kept doing these things and I was like, oh, I really should just be a teacher.
That's awesome.
I actually always hated teaching. I would say I was over the Black Student Union for like 2 years when I was in school. And I think that's what started me writing out like lesson plans or preparing a meeting in that way. But after I left, met Aaron for the first time and they said, like, I think I love your personality. Like, I would love for you to come in. I was a little hesitant, because I'm a little bit younger, but I think I love seeing people grow as a person. I don't care about how good they end out of my class. I always care about the growth while you are in my class. And I think I went in more trying to help myself. I've learned so much from them, like patience and how I've been handling my own social, like, I don't want to say issues now, but how to handle my own personal relationships, just seeing how they interact and how I'm advising them. I'm like, I got to take my own advice. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always thought that when people be like, oh yeah, you got to listen to the kids. I'm like, listen to the kids? What they know, But now as I'm sitting there listening to them talk and how they handle these situations, I'm like, that's how I need to, like, it's actually black and white. It's actually this simple. But when you get a little bit older, you feel like you have to, handle things a little bit different. But
what was your biggest surprise as a teacher that you didn't expect going into it?
Oh, wow. I might have to think about that one for a second.
Yeah.
I think the biggest surprise is the care and time and thinking and theory that goes into these like projects and these lesson plans. Because as a student, I felt like, okay, like they got it. Like everything is running smoothly. Like this is my teacher and I trust them. And then on the back end of things, I'm thinking about all these tiny little nuances, all these considerations of like, well, this has to go in this direction or maybe not. And we pivot and we're flexible. And just being able to see like, it's also kind of reassuring to know, maybe there's days that I felt like, wow, this really didn't go as I planned. But then remembering the student perspective and being like, sometimes those were my favorite days.
Yeah.
Where to begin? No, I think some of the biggest challenges have been just like being able to step back. It's hard for me not to get like super, super invested in students and their projects and their work. And so sometimes there's like now with my partner at home, it's like, okay, we got to stop talking about school. I have like a time limit because it really is something I just can seemingly spend way too much time kind of thinking about. So that's been huge, just knowing like when to step back a little bit from the work. And then, yeah, just trying to create authentic experiences with some of the limitations within a school district. We really try to create like I said, authentic, project-based projects, assignments. And I think I'm pretty ambitious with where I want us to go, and it's going to take like a long time to get there. There's a lot of growth ideas, pretty new, all things considered, especially compared to SOTA. And so like I'm impatient to get to some of those kind of like long-term goals. But no, beyond that, it's been a whirlwind, a lot to keep track of, a lot to learn in a really, really short amount of time. I'm taking classes outside of school through BICS to get my certification. And so I'm both a teacher and a student, which has been also tough to juggle. But yeah, so far I still have the energy for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like when I realized that teaching was about building relationships and less about having to harbor all of this knowledge, for me, that took a lot of pressure off. I think that the one thing that I've always done well in life is building relationships. I've always been like really social. I've always made friends really easily. I always like jokingly tell the story that my older brother was having issues like socially growing. And so my parents sent me to preschool with him to like help him make friends. So I've kind of just like always been in that role where like bringing people together has always been something that I love doing. And I think that when you are coming at some kids that haven't been exposed to that kind of like someone like wanting to reach out and to bring them in and to create community with them. And then you see them like the next year, like running mentor group and like coming to all the first looks and like running everything at camp. That is like the best. And I mean, and those kids are like constantly like finding themselves over and over and over again. Like they're coming in as these quiet freshmen and then they're leaving as leaders. And I think that mentor group has like such an impact on that. But yeah, I think that, like I said, like it took a lot of pressure off when I realized that it was just like, all you have to do is just kind of create a space here and get like a conversation moving, and everything else is just going to like go naturally by itself.
That's awesome. Can you think of a story from your first 2 years? I know it's only been like a year and, a couple months of a moment with a student or something that just connected and made you feel like this is definitely why I want to do this for a living.
I can think about one student in particular. And when they first showed up to my class, they were like totally checked out. They didn't want to do any work. They just wanted to like maybe chill on their phone in a corner. And they were like really standoffish. But like the empathy in me knew that like this isn't personal. Like this isn't necessarily who this person is. They have to be going through something. There's a bigger picture here. And just working with them one-on-one to try and break down the small steps that they could take forward in their academic journey, and really viewing it as like, okay, maybe we're not all pushing to this same standard. Like maybe things look a little bit differently for this student, and kind of like pivoting and like tailoring assignments, finding things that they're passionate about. And it went from, okay, the student won't even put their name in their paper, to the student is excited to tell me something that they know about, like the book that we're reading, Life of Pi. And that was just really impactful to know that like there was investment in the long game and that they also gained something from the experience. And now I think like I have a really positive relationship with the student too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I have a student in mentor group who came to IDEA very much with this vision of becoming an engineer. Great, I love it. I think from a financial perspective, right? Middle school, he had kind of looked at the career handbook and been ooh, okay, great, boom, highest salary, let's do that. And so he had some clear ideas, but was kind of struggling with getting excited about some of those things. And I eventually had him, finally this last year, I had him in my design class, and it was really cool to see some of his preconceptions and attitudes towards design kind of evolve and change. He had an awesome time in the class, just had a knack, an eye, came in saying like, I'm not creative, this is just not my thing, I don't draw. And yesterday he sent me an email for this publication, this zine he's putting together, where he's put all the he's done all the illustrations and stuff. And awesome. He just wanted feedback. It was totally a personal project, and he sent me an email on like a Sunday. I was like, hey, what do you think? If you've got time, can we review it during lunch? And he came in, and We gave him super professional work, was able to give him some great feedback. And I think he left, what did he say? Something along the lines of, I have some thinking to do. I'm not sure that, like, I'm on the engineering pathway, but I'm really enjoying design, and like now I'm not sure. And I think for me that was pretty special, just to see him kind of expand his perspective and his worldview, and just gain confidence in something that he had a pretty closed mindset about initially. And so I think that sums up, like, the best days are when I see students kind of change those initial preconceptions, when I see them evolve and grow, especially in something they're uncomfortable with. I have a lot of students that come in, they know they want to do design, and it's awesome to see them grow. Yeah. But for me, the most impactful experiences are when a student discovers that confidence through the projects. And we talk a lot about that. And I think for me, that's like where the magic happens, because then I can step back and they do the work on their own. They'll seek out help when they need it. They'll seek out mentors when they need it. But that passion and that confidence is there. So I think that was a special experience that came up recently.
I can think about one student in particular. And when they first showed up to my class, they were like totally checked out. They didn't want to do any work. They just wanted to like maybe chill on their phone in a corner. And they were like really standoffish. But like the empathy in me knew that like this isn't personal. Like this isn't necessarily who this person is. They have to be going through something. There's a bigger picture here. And just working with them one-on-one to try and break down the small steps that they could take forward in their academic journey, and really viewing it as like, okay, maybe we're not all pushing to this same standard. Like maybe things look a little bit differently for this student, and kind of like pivoting and like tailoring assignments, finding things that they're passionate about. And it went from, okay, the student won't even put their name in their paper, to the student is excited to tell me something that they know about, like the book that we're reading, Life of Pi. And that was just really impactful to know that like there was investment in the long game, and that they also gained something from the experience. And now I think like I have a really positive relationship with the student too.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask kind of a bigger question. So you chose to come back and work at our schools where you went to school, which is obviously a different experience than a lot of people have in high school. What do you think makes our schools different than what you would get at like a traditional comprehensive high school? Yeah.
And I mean, back when I went to high school, you had to spend a year at like a comprehensive high school. So I knew what that experience was a little bit too. I think that it's so experience-based that the memories you make here you take with you for a lifetime. This is like the science nerd in me, but it's like, I mean, a lot of ideas support, or a lot of theory supports that the more neural connections you make, like using your hands, seeing something, having conversations, the stronger your learning is, because you have so many different like avenues to explore these concepts. And I can't remember like the information even in college I had to maybe like word vomit onto a page in a 30-minute time period. But like I remember going to the zoo and life drawing the hammerhead sharks, like sitting in the aquarium. Or I remember like working with that doctor about sugar intake. And I remember like putting on a play about like deep social justice issues that we were faced with. And it's because of the like project-based learning that I felt more prepared for my like post-high academics than just here's all the stuff you're going to cram into your brain.
I think also as creatives, one thing before I got into teaching was like, what do I have to offer? Like I know how to choreograph a dance. I know how to put together a play. I know how to write a poem. I know how to slam a poem, but I don't really know if I can like help facilitate learning. And then when I got into teaching and saw that there were just all these different ways that, that could look, it made me feel like you can bring creativity into how you do it. And like, I think I used to think of teachers as like they were the people that had the knowledge and that they were supposed to give it to the students. And now it's kind of more of like you're walking alongside the student and you're helping them develop that as you're also like becoming a new person every year too. I hope that as teachers that we're constantly like re-evaluating who we are and we're refinding ourselves in every new class that comes in, because if we were to stay the same, then like what are we doing? but I like that changed for me, that it didn't have to be like me standing in front of a classroom and, you know, being like, you have to do this. This is what it has to look like. These are the things that we have to accomplish this year. But that like the students then get to have agency as well. And what do we want to do? How do we want to do this? Like, what can this look like? And I think that conversation around teaching and around identity is a really big, hot topic right now, especially with like what's going on politically in our country, and how we're allowing space for students to find themselves and be who they are, and how we're telling them the truth about, you know, where we're all coming from. And yeah.
Well, I think that every student deserves the opportunity to have these kind of experiences. So no matter what post-high plan they have, this is something they can take with them, whether they become like a mother, whether they become like a doctor, whether they want to go work in construction. Like, these are all things all experiences they can reflect on and are still impactful for their learning. I also think like being in a standards-based grading program or standards-based alleviates a lot of anxiety, because when you sit there and you take a test and you're like, okay, if I get one tiny thing wrong, despite the fact that I've studied for 3 hours the night before, like, I just failed this, it's over. And actually being in a place where it's like, can you do the skill? And that's what matters. And can you show me you can do this skill? It's just different. And I think it's more telling of like your learning and your understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think it's important for people call them soft skills, or the ability, like you said, you were doing circles at SOTA when you were, you know, a student 10 years ago. Do you think those are important skills that like our whole society needs, is to learn how to listen to each other and have conversations? Absolutely.
I feel like if more tough conversations were had, we wouldn't have so many problems that we do now. And if they are navigated with like active listening and communication, I mean, so many problems, people, I mean, in all generations still have to work on communication.
Yeah.
And I've had like mature conversations where like, this is this person's side, this is my side. How do we compromise at a level with like high school that I'm like, wow, if our world leaders like had these skills, maybe the world would be a different place.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that even if I can't understand what a student's going through, I think just holding that space, like getting into the hole, you know, I do love that analogy, but because I'm not always going to have the answers. Like, I don't always know what to do and I don't always know what to say, but like, I know how to hold space. Yeah. And I think that's the work that I have to do on myself outside of school, right? Like, I have to make sure that like where I'm at is like in a healthy, open mind space, so that when I show up, like I like actually have that space to hold. And I really want to believe that my mentees know that there's unconditional love when they walk into that classroom. And I want to believe that I am a safe person to be happy with, and that I'm a safe person to be mad at, and that I'm a safe person to tell things to, and that I'm a safe person to laugh with, and all of that. I mean, I love what Steve always says, our social worker. He always says, like, you know, kids are going to have the biggest behaviors with the people they feel the safest with. Yeah. And so even if I don't know what to do, or if I don't feel like I have the skill set, like I know how to hold space, and I just bear down and do it.
Elements of Education is a 501c3 nonprofit organization in Tacoma, Washington, dedicated to changing public education to better serve the specific and diverse needs of students in our public schools. For more information about how you can support the work that we do, please visit elementsofed.org, or you can find us on Instagram at Elements of Education, or on our website.